Hi, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to our People Matters virtual learning series. My name is Esther Martinez, and it's a pleasure to welcome you back once again to our masterclass series. Today's topic is a very big challenge and yet a great opportunity for all of us in the HR communities in managing employee experience, especially in the context of high growth market and especially in the context of the disruption that we are all facing. Very critical theme for us to work on. And I'm going to be introducing our speaker for today, and he's going to take us through some insights and reflections about how we can design, execute, and curate experiences that really matter for our employees. So joining us today, we have Kartik Krishnamurthy, Managing Director of Cornerstone OnDemand Asia. Hi, Kartik. How are you?
Hey, Esther. Good. How are you?
Very well. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
So what we're going to be doing, like we always do, before I give it over to Kartik, we're going to have some few questions that we want to engage with you. So be ready for those. But before I open up the questions, I want to briefly introduce you to Kartik. He needs no introduction in Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific. He's been working in the region for a very long time in his career. He's currently the Managing Director for Cornerstone OnDemand Asia. And in this role, he's responsible for the overall growth strategy for the Asia region, which includes Hong Kong, ASEAN, South Korea, and India as well, and provides oversight for the sales, marketing, client success, and partnerships and alliances. So welcome once again, Kartik, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Great. So let's have a look quickly to the first few questions that Kartik and I have prepared for you. As you know, we'll invite you to open a new window on our system and go to menti.com. So if I can request the team to just show yes. So you can say open www.menti.com. The code that we have for today's session is 429590. So you're going to have the same question, but before I request you to answer the question, I'm going to request the team to share the screen, the first PwC. If I can have that first, I'm sorry, I should have given the direction clearly. So the first question we prepared for you is on how the top global threats for your organization has changed. So mid-January 2020, PwC had showcased the top 10 threats that organizations are most worried about. And if I can see those on screen, that will be great. If it's not possible, I will say them, no problem. So in that report, we had in the top 10 global threats, we had over-regulation as number one. Very close to it was trade conflicts, followed by uncertainty in economic growth, followed by cyber threats and policy uncertainty. So these were the 5 top global threats. So I'm going to repeat them very quickly. The first one was over-regulation. The second was trade conflicts, uncertain economic growth, cyber threats, and policy uncertainty. So those were the threats in January 2020. And obviously that data probably would have been collected in quarter 3, quarter 4 of last year, calendar year. If I were to request all of you to reflect, if you think of what are the current threats and how much of that has changed on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 means, the threats are exactly the same as the ones I mentioned. 10 is like, my threats are completely different. What's threatening my business is completely different post-COVID-19. So where would you be? The threats have not changed at all, or my threats are completely changed? Okay, so we started to see, I'm going to wait a little bit, Kartik, because we still have only 30 responses. And it's interesting that this data just came bang in the middle.
Yeah, and it looks like it's moving towards the right-hand side, towards closer to the 10, which is, well, not surprising, but yeah.
So when you speak to, do you feel these global threats shift that we're seeing, whether it's 7 point, it seems like it's going towards a 7-ish. Do you feel this shift is only temporary, or do you think this may actually change the way we look at threats, probably more mid or long term?
Yeah, I think it'll be more mid to long term. Look, the crisis we are in, and I'll talk about that later, is an unprecedented time we're living in. So most countries, governments, policymakers, organizations, companies have not seen a situation like this. And probably, I think the last one was even the SARS and H1N1 was not this bad. Probably was a Spanish flu, right? So organizations and governments and policymakers and people are just trying to figure out what's the new norm moving forward. So I think many of these threats in varying degrees would change, and some would be here for a very long time and may become the new norm.
Yeah, great to see that. I think if you were to remove the outliers, some of us that rate it maybe 2, 3, which is bringing the average down. Majority of the bulk, if you were to take the median, it's probably going to be at the 7.5 upwards.
Yeah.
So I think that's really aligned to what you were mentioning. Great. So should we move to the next question? I think this second question that we prepared for you was to really understand the dynamics of the audience today, and where are you as an organization, if you were to reflect on your current state as a business today, what best describes what you're going through as an organization? So the first option we prepare for you is we are in survival mode, we're fighting it up, and we are hoping the situation improves, and we're just in that survival mode for now. So that's one option. Second is we're trying to pivot. So we're changing completely our business model. We're changing the way we do business. We either changing our customers or we're changing our offerings, but we're completely pivoting. And the third is we are thriving. We're capturing those opportunities that are emerging. We have a product that is probably supporting or aligned to the current situation. Where would you be out of these three extremes? It'll be lovely to see the audience, because that will also help Kartik as he takes us through the presentation today. Looks like, as always, when you have diverse groups, you have to address everyone's requirements.
Yeah, well, it looks like the survival mode is winning, and well, not surprising, right? Yeah, I figured that would be exactly where we find majority of our.
It was a matter of time, no? It was a matter of time.
I'm very curious to see, who are the thriving organizations, maybe in specific industries that they found a niche that they're going after. But yeah,
interesting. Great. So I think, does it surprise you to see most of us being in the survival mode? Is that what you're sensing with your clients? And
exactly.
Do you see many of those survival mode waiting and watching whether we should pivot or we should hold? What's the thought process?
Yeah, I think right now it depends on which industry you're in, right? If you're in retail, hospitality, services, you're literally. But if you look at what some of the experts talk about, this is the moment when a lot of the organizations are also saying, let's take advantage of this crisis. Like Rahm Emanuel, who was President Obama's chief of staff, very nicely put it, never let a good crisis go waste. So a lot of companies will look at this opportunity or this situation and say, okay, what can we do to double down? What can we do to improve the skills of our people? So when we come out of this, and we will come out of this, don't get me wrong, can we be productive from day one? Can we start that hockey stick growth for our respective businesses? So look, I think it's right. 36 of the audiences have said they're in survival mode, which is exactly where I expect them to be.
Very nice, very nice. So you're saying the pivoting doesn't necessarily have to be on the offerings. It also can be on the way we work and the way we deliver value.
Correct. And also, obviously, how you look at the experience of your employee. Because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that they, and we'll talk about that again later, but you got to make sure that the experience that they're having currently in the environment they're living in helps you pivot to the next level of your growth as a company.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kartik. And that takes me to the third question, which is specific on experience. And what we wanted to ask you all is to reflect on, in this COVID-19 situation, how how is employee experience overall as a strategic importance um, located in your pecking order as an organization? So the first, if I can have the question also just to show on the screen. So the first answer is yes, it's increased dramatically of importance. So it's become a really, really, really important focus area for us. The second is about, well, importance hasn't really changed, the same as it was before. And the third option is it's reduced of importance right now because we are prioritizing something else that may be more, it's taking precedence. So where are you right now on these three? And again, that will help us, Kartik, as we go through your session.
Correct. Wow.
I can see it's interesting that we're taking longer time to answer that question. That means it's like, oh, I'm not sure about it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What's been your experience when you're talking to your current customers, your clients? What's been your experience without looking at the data for a minute?
Yeah, look, from looking at speaking to our clients and customers, like I mentioned, this is the new norm in terms of how people are working. People are working, they're home, their kids are home, so they have to balance out both their professional as well as their personal environment. So, it's up to us as employees, as leaders, to ensure that the employee experience of our talent should be number one priority. When I say experience, there's a lot of things to that, but like I said, if we are able to manage and keep the morale and experience of our talent at the highest levels and invest in that today, when we come out of this, it will just provide dividends to the customers and obviously overall to the shareholders of the respective companies. So from my perspective, my clients, my customers are saying, okay, this is the time to double down and make sure our employees are getting the right experience that they need to learn and grow.
Yeah. So what will be your message then for those 20% of our audience that say, well, I really wish this was a priority, but we are overwhelmed with other things at the moment. What will be your message to them?
Look, I love to understand, again, this 20% where they fall. And if there are these organizations that literally are in the survival mode for a variety of reasons, and I get it, right? If you're in that mode, you have other things to worry about and take care first before talent experience or employee experience. But I would say to them, look, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be either or. I would say, if your business model is strong and if you believe that you will come out of this strong on the other side, take this opportunity to invest in your employees because you will need it. So if your business model is strong, invest in your talent, you come out of the other side very strong. You just see dividends back.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kartik. And probably we will cover that as we go through your session and also in the closing remarks as well. So before I give it over to you, Kartik, I want to invite everyone to keep sharing your questions on the right side of the chat. So either you can send them here if you're joining us from the People Matters live stream, or if you're in the LinkedIn live as well, please put your questions there. If you're seeing us from YouTube live, again, you can put the questions there because we have a great team that is going to curate them from all different channels to make sure that it reaches Kartik. And we will take the questions at the end of the presentation. So then it allows Kartik to go to his flow with everyone's permission. All right, so we're ready to go. Over to you, Kartik.
Thank you once again. As Esther mentioned, my name is Kartik. I'm the Managing Director for Cornerstone Asia. And it's thank you all for joining. It's an interesting topic we're going to talk about today around how do we manage our employee experience in a high growth environment, especially with COVID-19. So if you move to the next slide, please. Today we are in an age of disruption, and obviously anyone in the business world, even casual observers of it, know that we're living in what's a massive era of disruption. Obviously, COVID-19, the pandemic, is a humanitarian crisis that continues to take a tragic toll on people's lives. There's no denying that it's also acting as a catalyst for change across the economic, societal, personal, and corporate, on a scale that's never been seen since pretty much wartime. The scale of change and the speed of change at which this is happening is actually also shining a bright light on the fact that companies are facing a once-in-a-lifetime, a once-in-a-generation shift. And for all the uncertainty about what the future will look like, it's already clear that the future will be digital. In fact, I think many of you have seen this. There's a popular meme going around that neatly encapsulates the tipping point of digital. Many organizations were asked this question in terms of, who's driving your digital transformation. The first two choices were your CEO and your chief digital officer. But below that, highlighted in a bright red circle, was COVID-19. In short, companies and even industries will need to shift in ways that have not been anticipated before. And products and services that were revolutionary even 3, 4, 5 months ago will be rendered obsolete if we as organizations are not fast enough to adopt changes. When I talk about organizations, it's also about people. So the number one job for us as leaders is to ensure that in our organizations, but more importantly, our people, aren't left behind in this era of disruption. Next slide, please. As we talked about the age of disruption, we're also living in a human age. And when you think about the world today, it's extremely different to what it was just 3 to 4 months ago. We're seeing a lot of differences in the workplace. The companies are concerned about the well-being of their people. They're concerned about radically different experiences for people at work. We're also seeing a lot of employees bringing a set of new expectations to their workplace, and they're asking their employers to help them deeply on a human level. Now, asking for safety, looking for trust, for transparency, for social accountability, a purpose, and how they can grow at their respective workplaces. Next slide, please. So what does this all mean? Right? At the end of the day, as we think about the global forces that are reshaping what we do at our workplace, our workforce, our work itself, we're also seeing the potential of technology and its impact to people's lives in a meaningful way. And we now have the opportunity to rethink technology from the ground up and focus on the individual and their experiences at work. We're literally at the cusp of a very exciting new phase and era. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at how this disruption is impacting our companies. Here, what you see is a report by PwC. Was sometime in the early to mid-January that PwC put this report out, where they looked at global CEOs and asked them, what are some of the top threats that they see? And you'll see a general sentiment around uncertainty, conflict, threats, volatility, a lot of nervousness amongst businesses today. So as you think about all of this, and obviously post-COVID-19, some of these sentiments have accelerated. In fact, a lot of CEOs also now see a U-shape, which is a very long period between recession and upturn, to also a potential smaller V-shaped recovery. So the question is, are we ready for that change? Are we ready to do what we need to be done for our companies to be successful? What you also see on these top 10 threats is the speed of technology change, which comes in at number 8. And obviously, because of COVID-19, a lot of that will get accelerated because of the environment we live in. Next slide, please. However, what I found interesting in that study from PwC was that the lack of availability of key skills has been steadily on the rise for the last 10 years. In 2019, while the availability of key skills was at number 3, in 2020, it has slipped slightly to number 6. But there's still a couple of points delta between the pace of technology change, and it also makes me think about where we are with regards to technology change and availability of key skills. Because it appears that we are doing a really good job in retooling our systems than we are with our people. 35% of APAC organizations in the same study were polled that reported the lack of digital skills has impacted their performance. And 60% of the companies have not taken any action to tackle the lack of digital skills of the employees. And obviously, COVID-19 will accelerate that change. So what this says to me, as I mentioned earlier, is the delta between the speed of technology change at number 8 and availability of key skills at number 6 is that we're not keeping up. And we're not helping our people with change. We've become really good in retooling our processes and systems than we are with our people. Next slide, please. So what has this resulted in? This has resulted in a crisis for our people at work. Now, I spend a lot of time with CHROs and other C-level executives, and almost all of them are concerned about their people. And yes, we are living in an era of unprecedented high levels of anxiety, high levels of stress at the workplace, high levels of disengagement, and tremendous burnout. In fact, in a recent study done by Cigna 360 Wellbeing Survey, it found that 87% of the employees globally are experiencing burnout in their current jobs. And that number in Singapore is really high. It's about 92%. This is even more exacerbated due to COVID-19, where employees are working from home and they need to find the balance between the needs of their work and the attention of their children, as well as their schoolwork. And so the number one reason why people are leaving jobs is the inability to learn and grow because of the stress and anxious levels that they're living in. And I feel that we're not investing sufficiently in these people. Things are changing constantly around them. Skill sets are constantly changing, and we're not giving them the opportunities that they need to keep up with the pace of change. So people literally cannot keep up. Next slide, please. And guess what? It's not going to slow down anytime soon. This is the new normal. There's no indication that the pace of technology change and the global change that comes with it is going to slow down any given point of time. In fact, it's just going to accelerate even more. Next slide, please. So what do we need to do? What we need to do is to focus on cultivating adaptive humans. We need to cultivate humans who are confidently able to navigate through continuous change and keep growing. It's even more than just the ability to adjust. It's the ability to respond to ambiguity and change. It's about our attitude to change, our willingness to drive change externally and change ourselves internally. And we ourselves need to be open and continuously evolve. Next slide, please. There was a very interesting study done by Mercer on the global talent trends recently. And in many regards, the way we are conducting business is only helping us survive. And I understand, today, based on which industry you find yourselves in, the need of the hour is survival. But the question is, how do we help our people and companies? Because most companies today are operating in a fixed operating and people model. They haven't developed the organizational ability to be agile as the world demands, as the world shifts. And no surprise, in these fixed environments, we see very low levels of innovation and engagement. And the way we are conducting ourselves is only helping us survive. And as I mentioned, today, the need may be survival, but most experts do believe that things will change. We will come out of this pandemic. The question is, next slide, please, are we ready to move from a surviving organization to a thriving organization? Because traditionally, we've always relied on IQ, or the capacity for knowledge, as a measurement of high skill and high perceived value. IQ causes people to resist change because it means that they're no longer an expert, right? And change is seen as a threat. We then started focusing on what's called emotional capacity, or EQ. And EQ helps people to react to change and deal with it, but it's still a very reactive stance. They can handle change, but still not at an optimal relationship with change. What most successful, thriving organizations do is they look at how do we develop people with adaptive quotient, or AQ, or a high capacity for change. They look constantly to learn, take risks, embrace change, experiment. They're curious. So when people can gain confidence in themselves, they're able to engage even more in themselves and take a proactive approach and relationship to change. In short, AQ literally enables people to embrace and expect change as a place of opportunity. Next slide, please. So one of the questions we're always asked is, what are the common traits of adaptive quotient? What kind of people are these folks? How can we find them? How do we cultivate them? What we found in that research was that most folks who come with AQ is not a either or, that they either come with it or don't come with it. In fact, a lot of these traits actually can be taught. So most of these folks are optimists in general. They're very curious, they're resilient. They have a beginner's mindset. In Zen Buddhist term, we call it, welcome the world with an open mind without bias. they celebrate failure, and the culture of the organization is important to help them celebrate that failure. And last but not least, they're highly resourceful. They find ways to be creative to solve new problems. So if you look at all of these traits, it's actually incumbent on us as leaders to create this environment so that we can really help accelerate and move our people from just IQ to EQ, eventually to an AQ, so that we as a company can move from surviving to thriving organizations. Next slide, please. So what we need to do today is to find ways as organizations to empower our people with confidence, to face today's overwhelming pace of change. Like I mentioned, with the AQ trait we just talked about, it provides you some clues in terms of what we can do. Next slide. So the question is, what if technology could help people adapt and navigate change? What if technology could help people develop a higher level of adaptive quotient, or AQ? And is there a way for technology to augment our abilities at work? Next slide, please. Before we answer the question, one of the things we really need to ask ourselves as an HR tech industry is, where are we? And I think we in general have left our people behind because we focus so much on organization performance that we have not paid attention to our people. We've done a great job in giving people the technology and support they need, but we've never empowered them to change and thrive. And that's where I believe that technology and HR technology plays a big role in how we shape that. Next slide, please. So I think this slide, even though it says a brief history, should actually resonate with lots of folks on this call. As we think about the brief history in the HR technology industry, in 2000s, we focused a lot on automation, on manual processes, right? Recruiting, performance, learning, and overall optimizing the HR industry or HR function, squeezing some cost out of it and making HR professional job fulfilling, less manual and administrative. We then started seeing, how does technology help you unify the processes in a more meaningful way? So we no longer had silos of learning and performance and succession as separate, distinct business processes, but all part of one. It was all about managing the supply and demand of talent to meet the needs of our businesses. So we then had a dawn and era of what's called talent management and talent engagement and unified talent management. So the next phase, which was around 5-7 years ago, we saw the advent of engagement. How can we measure engagement in a very meaningful way so we can drive engagement within our workforce? So we started seeing the explosion of innovative point solutions, as well as increased amount of engagement software by the big vendors. What I'm excited about is the next phase we are going to, which is the era of experience. How can we holistically look at the experience of an employee at the work that they are part of and make them meaningful and have a meaningful impact to what they do on a day-to-day basis? And the good news is that, while we focus on automation, integration, engagement, our employees have already started looking at consumer technologies in their personal lives, and they want to bring that and augment that to their work life so it becomes a more holistic experience. Next slide, please. So let's just take a look at this, right? Like I said, the bar has been set. This is a typical day for most of us, and me included, is, when we wake up in the morning, obviously with our alarm, we look at some news, which unfortunately is all about COVID-19. Looking at, have the cases gone up? Have the cases gone down? Has the country flattened the curve? Has restrictions been lifted? You may then go for a walk or a run, or use your virtual workout apps. Come back home or get back into your office work area, get onto your virtual conference call with Zoom, MS Teams, or WebEx. Also help your kids with their school virtual instructor-led training. You may order lunch using Grab, and towards the end of the day, stream some music or binge watch your favorite shows. The reason I'm saying this is because this is us on a daily basis, and this is what our employees are also asking us, is how do we blend what we do on our personal lives and how we bring it together in our work lives. Next slide, please. So the good news is that, like I said, our people are ready for it because they're already operating in an environment. So I think we also need to think about how do we reinvent what technology does for them in their personal lives and bring it to their work lives. Next slide, please. And we at Cornerstone have been thinking about this for quite some time, and we've envisioned talent experience as frictionless, personalized, and relevant work experiences where people are increasingly engaged and effective. So, what does frictionless mean? Frictionless means bringing content and transactions and the knowledge to come to our employees. Like, we cannot assume that our people will stop, take the time out of their busy lives, and go and learn something on their portal. It's not going to happen. So we need to bring technology or software to where our people are working and help them to develop and learn in the flow of their work. What is personalized? We all look at the apps on our phones and they're highly personalized. It all depends on how you've interacted with those apps in your recent history. The same thing applies to our work lives, right? No two employees are the same. Different jobs, different skill sets. Some want to spend 2 hours, some 15 minutes, some on the go, etc. So we need to keep in mind how we are delivering a very personalized experience to our employees so we can connect with them across different regions, businesses, so that they know how to learn, share, and improve the collaboration. And last but not the least, relevant. We need to provide them information. We need to provide them the technology and software that helps them to contextualize and bring things that are relevant to what they do on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So this is our vision moving forward. Talent management, talent experience, bringing two distinct lenses to the way we think about, obviously our products and solutions and strategies. While talent management is not going away, but talent experience is the additional layer and the lens that we build on top of our talent management software. So what is talent management? Look, talent management is just a unified, holistic business function. It's not individual parts and pieces and processes. Because I'm sure when you all talk to your COO, your head of sales, your CFO, even your CEO, they don't talk about HR processes. Your leaders are asking you about how do we attract the top talent faster than the competition? How do we identify scarce skills in the marketplace and create diverse talent pools? How do you retain your best people? How do you move with speed and agility and not be in the fixed business model, but move from surviving to thriving? And how do you look for all of that at the lower cost? Talent experience is equally important. And it's the key to understand the employee's perspective. And the research shows that your people want 4 basic things at their workplace from the employer. Number 1, how do I develop my skills continuously so that I can stay relevant in an ever-changing environment, and not just for my current job, but for the next role or next phase of my career. Number 2, what's my clear path to success and what's expected of me? How am I doing in my current role, and what do I need to do to improve? And this, by the way, is globally on the rise. As the pace of work and business changes, one of the top things that almost every single organization in their employee survey is, where are we going and what is expected of me and how do I get better? Number 3, they want to be seen and included. Their voices heard without bias. They do not want to be another cog in the wheel, and they want to be valued. And number 4, and most importantly, is they want work-life balance, right? They want their work and life to be simplified. We all thought that technology will make our work life really easy, but I'm sure many of you will agree, technology has actually made our work life even more complex. So simplification is the holy grail. So we know that both talent management and talent experience are important. And this is how we at Cornerstone continue to bring innovative solutions and product expertise to help you with your business and individual outcomes for your talent. Next slide, please. So when we think about talent experience, we think about it as a journey, and choose your own adventure by the employee, right? It's comprised of what we call micro moments that matter in an employee's journey. It's not streamlined. It's not linear. It's a multi-dimensional process that allows employees to explore their career, their development opportunities. It's tailored to the individual moments that matter to them in their career, in their lives. Whether they're joining an organization for the first time and have new needs, not just onboarding basics, but things like, who do I know? And are there other people I've worked with previously? Who can I connect with common interests? There could be a group of people who are first-time managers, so they're asking for help. They've never done it before and would like to get some feedback, because we know as a first-time manager how difficult it is managing people. Or even things like, I've done something like I've never done before and I would like to get some feedback so I can learn and evolve in a rich way. So we as an organization look for these micro moments and incorporate them into all of our solutions so that it's holistic, meaningful, personalized, and contextualized. Next slide, please. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. After all, we at Cornerstone believe that people can achieve anything when they have the right development opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, and most of the experts also agree, we will come out of this current environment, but we want to position ourselves as thriving organizations. So the key for us as leaders today is to ensure we focus on our talent because, as the late Steve Jobs once said, the number one driver for long-term shareholder value is talent. Once again, thank you for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Sir, over to you.
Coming on the screen. Some of them are actually kind of double click on a few things that you already mentioned during your presentation. I'm going to take the first question, which is connected to the poll question, but also connected to some of the things that you mentioned. Specifically in the context of COVID-19, what are the areas that you think organizations should definitely prioritize and focus on?
Yeah, look, like I said, because of COVID-19, the way our employees, where our talent is very, very different geography. So, for example, companies in markets like South Korea working from home they feel working from home equates not working. So you have to go to work. That equates that you're being productive and you're doing something. So as organizations and markets like that, how do you then change the perspective and the perception that working from home does not mean you're just not doing anything? So as companies, how do we invest in modern tools and technology to help employees in markets like that to be even more productive? In other markets, I said this is the time. This is the time where you literally double down on skills. We're working with a large financial services institution in ASEAN, in a growing market in ASEAN, and they're under lockdown. Every one of their 7,000 employees are under lockdown. But one of the things the CHRO, the chairman, the CEO have decided is this is the time that they really want to provide their talent the right level of skills, not just skills for their current job, but it's cross-collaboration skills. So when things turn in the right way, how do these people get even more productive? I was speaking to a CHRO earlier this week, and he said, they're in an industry that is hurting because they serve the airline organization, the airline industry. And for them, it was, how do I take someone who's frontline and serving an airline business and provide him or her the skills that can be replicated in another industry that they are serving that's actually doing really well? So, from my perspective, what companies can do today is look at your employees in different parts of your geography, your employees in different functions, and treat them uniquely in terms of what they need to be more successful. It's not a one-size-fits-all. What's the one-size-fits-all is providing them the tools, the technology, the infrastructure. Beyond that, it's up to us as leaders to ensure that we are constantly with our employees during this time of crisis.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Kartik. There's a couple of questions that converge. So I'm going to ask it for you together. So there's one question related to how do we engage and create that experience when, cost cutting is a big priority. So how can we invest or create a business case for investment when, it's a very, very challenging financial situation for many organizations?
Yeah, look, you don't have to do is, we don't have to spend millions just to build that experience on a daily basis, right? Like I said, it's the micro moments that matter. Small things, and you've seen this across LinkedIn in many feeds. Bring your team together, have a virtual happy hour, have a virtual lunch, connect with them. If you're doing your one-on-ones, do it over video. And like I said, the table stakes of providing the technology is what's expected. That's not going to change. If you haven't done that, I think it's not too late. Do it right now. There are lots of tools, lots of technologies that you can use immediately, but you don't have to invest millions in creating that experience. It is all up to you as leaders, as managers, employees of your companies to create those micro moments that help your employees feel the belongingness that they want with your respective companies. So whether you're cutting costs or you're investing, you're doubling down, just look at those moments and build upon that.
So in that journey of building those moments, I think one of the roadblocks is not putting the employee at the center and really think about silos of HR function. How do we break that paradigm of thinking functional? This is, recruitment or learning, or as you said, promotion or career development, and really understand that that person actually is one experience connected.
Correct. That's a great question, and I think it's not a very easy answer, because I just feel a lot of companies are going backwards into the 2000s, where it was all about these silos. It's recruitment, it's learning, it's performance, it's development. I think we need to just quickly realize that while those functions are important, businesses don't look at it from a functional siloed perspective, and that's also the responsibility of senior executives and leaders in your respective companies. How do you break down those silos, right? HR is not about just one thing, and different business functions need to also understand that today your HR organization is even more important than ever before. In fact, we were talking to, our CEO was talking to a very senior CHRO, and he said, I've always fought to get a seat on the table. And guess what? COVID-19 has automatically put me at the center of the table, because this is where my CEO, my chairman, my board is looking at me and saying, how am I helping my talent? And what am I doing to create those micro moment experiences for our employees? So to answer your question, I think this is directly the responsibility of us as leaders to break those silos down and not go back in time and create those once again.
Yeah. All right. So we have lots of additional questions, Kartik, that have come, especially on LinkedIn. I see a lot of conversations. So I'll invite you to join us on the LinkedIn link later and answer some of those questions. But we are running out of time. So I'm going to I want to double click on what you just mentioned on the seat on the table. And what would be your advice for CHROs who are in this call today with all of us? One thing to start doing, one thing to stop doing, to take on this big opportunity to impact business going forward?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned in my presentation, when you're speaking to your CFO, CEO, COO, or whichever peer in the C-suite or even your board, what they are worried about is, how are we going to survive in this environment, especially if you're in a particular industry that's really hurting. There's one segment of executives that saying, okay, how do we make sure that we don't waste this crisis? And there's one segment of executives saying, we have a phenomenal opportunity. How do we double down? So depending on which industry you find yourselves in, my advice to CHROs is start speaking the language of your business executives. Your executives want to know if you're thriving and you found an opportunity to really, zoom your business up. Where is the right talent that they can attract today? How do you do it very quickly? How do you do it at scale? If you're in an environment where you believe that you are in a survival mode and you need to really cut costs, you need to speak the language to say, hey, that's fine, we do cut costs, but we will come out of this at the other end and we will bounce back. But how do we make sure that our talent is ready to bounce back and be productive from day one? I would say start talking the business language of your leaders and stop being in this traditional siloed mode of, hey, we have frozen hiring, or our performance systems are doing X, Y, and Z. That's not what your leaders want to know. Your leaders want to know, how do we survive? How do we thrive? And what's going to happen 6, 8, 10 months down the lane? And then how do we make sure that we are coming out of this in the right way?
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Kartik. And I think as you started your session by saying that don't waste a good crisis, then this is probably a great opportunity to change those mindsets as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Great. So we've really run out of time. I can't believe it's already been 46 minutes. We've crossed the time limit, but I think it was worth every minute of it. So thanks, Kartik, for putting this deck together and sharing your experience and your practical examples.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you so much. Good luck. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kartik. Thanks so much. And thanks, everyone, for keeping the conversation going, your questions, and your encouraging words as well. And we're going to be continuing with the employee experience team. As you know, People Matters is doing a virtual conference on 19th of June. And I personally would like to welcome you all to join us for the conference. It's going to be a full day conference. All registration of the delegates is all going to go to UNICEF COVID-19 fund. So I really invite you to join us, not only to continue and learn the employee experience, but also to contribute and do our little bit as well. So thanks once again, and look forward meeting you very soon in our next session. Have a wonderful day.